The Tower of London looms as an emblem of royal power and authority, yet its ancient stones harbor the haunting echoes of anguished screams that have long since faded from history. Between the years 1485 and 1603, the Tudor dynasty emerged, transforming England during a tumultuous reign. It's marked by a level of terror and brutality that would make even the most seasoned executioner hesitate. Today we will delve into the shadowy recesses of English history, a time when political ambition frequently collided with the grim realities of state executions. Where 7 significant deaths indelibly altered the trajectory of a nation, the Tudor era arose from the devastation of the Wars of the Roses, a protracted and bloody civil conflict that ravaged England for 30 years. When Henry VII seized the throne after triumphing at the Battle of Bosworth Field in 1485, he inherited a kingdom deeply scarred by decades of noble rivalries and political turmoil. Facing continual threats from competing claimants, pervasive religious upheaval, and incursions from foreign powers, the Tudors discovered that instilling fear could serve as their most potent weapon. While the practice of public execution, as both punishment and spectacle, was not new to England, the Tudors refined it into a chilling art form. These executions transcended simple justice. They were elaborate performances designed to exhibit unassailable royal authority. The scaffold transformed into a stage where kings and queens could simultaneously neutralize threats and deliver stark warnings to anyone who dared to question their sovereignty. The very public nature of these executions ensured that their repercussions rippled through society for generations to come. Throughout medieval England, brutal methods of execution had long been employed. But the Tudor period saw a systematic enhancement of these practices aimed at maximizing their psychological impact. The chosen method of execution often mirrored the perceived severity of the crime, as well as the social standing of the condemned. Nobles could anticipate the swift stroke of an axe, while commoners were typically subjected to the excruciating process of hanging, drawing, and quartering. Nevertheless, the Tudors adeptly found ways to heighten the horror of each execution, ensuring that every death served broader political ends. The religious transformations sweeping through Tudor England further provided justification for their extreme measures. Henry VIII's schism with the Roman Catholic Church in the 1530s birthed a new category of treason: religious dissent. Suddenly, personal beliefs became matters of state security. Failing to acknowledge the king's supremacy in religious matters could easily lead one to the execution or S-block. This intertwining of political and religious authority granted the Tudors unprecedented dominion over the lives and deaths of their subjects. At the heart of Tudor brutality lay the Tower of London, which became notorious for the noble blood that stained its walls. Its sinister reputation as a place of irrevocable fate was cultivated by the monarchy, serving as both a prison and execution ground for the kingdom's most formidable enemies. The imposing sight of its walls was designed to instill fear in the hearts of potential conspirators. The chilling narratives that emerged from within its confines propagated a culture of terror that extended well beyond London's borders. Public executions in Tudor England, carefully choreographed events, attracted throngs of onlookers, often numbering in the thousands. These gatherings fulfilled multiple purposes. They served as entertainment for the masses, showcased royal justice in action, and forged collective witnesses to the grim consequences of defiance against the crown. The carnival-like atmosphere surrounding these events masked the deeper psychological manipulation at play. As the monarchy transformed acts of state violence into communal experiences, reinforcing social hierarchies and political allegiance, the 7 executions we are about to explore represent far more than isolated acts of royal vengeance. They were pivotal moments that helped shape the Tudor legacy and significantly influenced the course of English history. Each death carried weighty implications that transcended individual tragedy, impacting religious policy, international relations, and the very essence of royal authority. These were not random acts of cruelty, but calculated political maneuvers in a deadly game with stakes nothing less than the future of England itself. On the fateful morning of May 19, 1536, Anne Boleyn made her way across the courtyard of the Tower of London toward a scaffold that would mark her as the first English queen to be publicly executed. The woman who had once enchanted a king and instigated a seismic shift in English religion was poised to face an end so shocking that its implications would reverberate throughout Europe for centuries. The hastily arranged charges against her were those of adultery and treason, allegations that many modern historians consider largely fabricated to fulfill Henry VIII's desperate desire for a new wife and a male heir. Anne Boleyn's ascent to power had been as dramatic as her impending fall would be swift. Born into minor nobility, she caught the eye of Henry VIII while serving as a lady-in-waiting to his first wife, Catherine of Aragon. Their passionate courtship lasted 6 years, during which time Henry extricated England from the clutches of the Roman Catholic Church, dissolved his marriage to Catherine, and established himself as the supreme head of the Church of England, all in pursuit of marrying and in securing the legitimate male heir he had long sought. The charges leveled against Anne were sensational but dubious at best. She was accused of committing adultery with 5 men, including her own brother, George Boleyn, and of conspiring against the king. The evidence presented was largely based on court gossip, extracted confessions procured under duress, and circumstantial observations twisted into a semblance of proof. The proceedings unfolded with alarming speed from her arrest to her execution, a mere 19 days, underscoring the foregone conclusion that had already been established. Henry had swiftly begun courting Jane Seymour, making Anne's continued existence an inconvenient hurdle to his matrimonial ambitions. The trial itself was a masterclass in judicial manipulation. Denied proper legal representation, Anne faced a panel of judges that included her own uncle, the Duke of Norfolk, who had been coerced by the king into ensuring a guilty verdict. The most damaging testimony against her came from Mark Smeaton, a court musician, who admitted to an affair with the Queen only after enduring torture. The other accused men maintained their innocence, remaining steadfast even unto death. Bam. But their protests were drowned out by the political necessity of Anne's destruction. The true brutality of an execution lay not only in the physical act, but also in the psychological torment that preceded it. Henry chose not to use the traditional axe, but instead imported a skilled swordsman from Calais, ostensibly to afford her a mercifully clean death. However, this decision had the unintended effect of prolonging her torment. As she was left in the grip of anxiety, not knowing when her end would come, the swordsman's delayed arrival added to her mental anguish, forcing her to prepare for death multiple times, only to receive last-minute reprieves that served no purpose other than to further torment her. When the moment of reckoning finally arrived on the scaffold, Anne retained a dignity that had been meticulously stripped from her during the preceding weeks. Clad in a gray damask gown trimmed with fur and donning a white headdress that concealed her dark hair, she presented herself with the regal bearing fitting an anointed queen. Her final words were carefully crafted to incriminate no one, avoiding any potential excuses for further persecution of her family and supporters. She lauded Henry as a gentle and merciful prince, and asked only to be judged kindly after her passing. The execution itself was swift and laden with symbolic significance. As Anne knelt and whispered, "Jesus, receive my soul," the French swordsman approached from behind and delivered a singular, decisive stroke that severed her head cleanly from her body. Eyewitnesses recounted that her lips continued to move in prayer for several moments post-decapitation, a detail that would endure in the realm of legend and intrigue. The crowd assembled to witness this gruesome spectacle stood in stunned silence, as if collectively aware that they had just witnessed an act that would fundamentally alter the nature of royal authority in England. The immediate aftermath of Anne's execution laid bare the calculated nature of Henry's maneuvers. Within 24 hours of her passing, he publicly betrothed Jane Seymour and married her just 11 days later. Meanwhile, Anne's daughter Elizabeth was declared illegitimate and stripped of her claim to the throne, though she would later rise to become one of England's most renowned monarchs. The rapidity of Henry's actions to obliterate Anne from official memory illustrated that her death had been orchestrated as part of a larger political strategy, rather than a genuine response to tangible crimes. Barely had the scaffold at Tower Green been cleansed of Anne Boleyn's blood, when it welcomed yet another young queen to her death, just 5 years later. Catherine Howard, the 5th wife of Henry VIII, was merely 19 years old when she was dragged to her execution on February 13, 1542. Her youth rendered her demise particularly shocking to contemporaries. Yet it was the salacious nature of her alleged crimes that scandalized Tudor England and provided Henry with the justification. He sought for yet another royal execution. Catherine's tumultuous journey to the throne began in the noble household of her step-grandmother, Agnes Howard, the Dowager Duchess of Norfolk. This sprawling estate harbored numerous young noblewomen. It was here that Catherine received an education that effectively groomed her for political maneuvering, yet left her vulnerable to the loose moral climate of her surroundings. The Duchess's household was notorious for its permissive atmosphere, where sexual exploration among the residents was commonplace and largely unchecked. This environment would later furnish Henry's investigators with a trove of compromising evidence from Catherine's formative years. Even before her marriage to the king, Catherine had engaged in sexual relationships that would be used against her in her later trial. As a teenager, she was involved with Henry Mannix, her music teacher, and subsequently with Francis Derham, a gentleman in her grandmother's service. These youthful romances were more than mere flings. They were characterized by reported passionate encounters and exchanges of gifts that could be construed as binding marital contracts. Under Tudor law, Catherine may have been considered married to Derham before even meeting Henry. By the time Catherine arrived at court as a lady-in-waiting to Henry's fourth wife, Anne of Cleves, Henry VIII, now nearly 50, and increasingly corpulent and ill-tempered, became infatuated with her youthful beauty and vivacious spirit. This stark contrast to his previous wife quickly drew him to her. He expedited their marriage in July 1540, a mere 3 weeks after annulling his union with Anne of Cleves. Yet, while Catherine ascended from minor nobility to the throne in a matter of months, she was ill-prepared for the treacherous waters of Tudor court politics. The charges against Catherine were far more intricate than straightforward adultery. Investigations revealed that she had concealed her prior relationships upon marrying the king, constituting fraud and potentially undermining the legitimacy of their marriage. More damaging were allegations that she continued these relationships after becoming queen. The most serious of these claims implicated Thomas Culpeper, a gentleman of the king's privy chamber, whom Catherine allegedly maintained a secret affair while married to Henry. Their clandestine meetings, orchestrated by Catherine's lady-in-waiting Jane Boleyn, were framed as conspiracies against the crown. The evidence against her included love letters written in her own hand. Though the precise contents remain a subject of historical debate, what cannot be denied is that Catherine engaged in secret rendezvous with Culpeper, often in the early hours, always without the king's knowledge or consent. Whether these encounters culminated in physical intimacy or were merely emotional attachments held no relevance under Tudor law. The act of meeting secretly with a man while wed to the king was deemed treasonous and punishable by death. The psychological torment inflicted upon Catherine during her imprisonment was particularly cruel. She endured isolation within the tower, deprived of the comfort of trusted companions or family, and subjected to relentless interrogations aimed at breaking her spirit. Witnesses described her mental state deteriorating rapidly, with reports of her becoming hysterical and alternating between screaming and uncontrollable laughter. The combination of her youth and inexperience rendered her vulnerable to the duplicitous tactics employed by Henry's investigators. On the eve of her execution, Catherine reportedly spent agonizing hours practicing how to place her head upon the block, resolute in her determination to face death with dignity, despite her overwhelming fear. This macabre rehearsal poignantly illustrates the mental preparation required to endure a brutal execution and highlights her desperate attempt to exert control over her final moments. The haunting image of a teenager rehearsing her own beheading stands as a poignant reminder of the psychological cruelty that defined Tudor executions. Lady Jane Grey was just 16 years old when she was proclaimed Queen of England on July 10, 1553, and mere days later at the age of 17. Her head fell at Tower Green on February 12, 1554. Her reign, lasting only 9 days before Mary Tudor successfully asserted her claim to the throne, earned her the tragic epithet of the 9 Days Queen. However, it was Jane's naive entanglement in the political machinations that placed her on the throne, and her dignified acceptance of her fate that rendered her execution one of the most poignant and politically consequential of the Tudor era. Jane's ascendance was orchestrated entirely by others, beginning with her ambitious parents and culminating with the scheming of John Dudley, Duke of Northumberland. He sought to solidify his influence in the aftermath of the young King Edward VI's death. Throughout this entire ordeal, Jane herself remained a reluctant participant. Raised as a devout Protestant scholar, more intrigued by theological discussions than by the prevailing political intrigues. Her exceptional education, including fluency in Latin, Greek, Hebrew, and other languages, had prepared her to be an ornament of the humanist court rather than a pawn in a lethal royal succession game. The legal justification for Jane's claim to the throne hinged on Edward VI's final will, which had been altered under Northumberland's pressure to exclude both Mary and Elizabeth Tudor from the line of succession. Although originally conceived to ensure a Protestant heir, the succession device names Jane as the appointed heir purely based on her lineage and faith. In this grim tableau of Tudor history, the patterns of ambition, betrayal, and ruthlessness unveil the chilling realities of power dynamics and the dire consequences faced by those caught in their web. The lives and deaths of these 7 figures not only illuminate the relentless pursuit of authority during the Tudor dynasty, but also resonate as stark reminders of the often harrowing intersection between personal ambition and the brutal machinery of state politics. Subscribe to our channel and press the bell icon to support our work and never miss an upload. Like this video, drop a comment, and share it with others to show your support and help us grow this historical community.